I will go ahead and start out and tell you a little bit about the Energy Education Council. And I'm Molly Hall. I work with the Energy Education Council. We're a nonprofit organization that exists solely to educate about electrical safety and energy efficiency. You'll see over here on my left an 18-foot energy efficiency wall. This is a great way to see what's behind your drywall and to see how your energy gets lost, wasted. And who wants to pay money they don't need to pay these days? So Bob Dickey over there from Eastern Illini, we've got an expert over there from Ameren, Illinois' Act on Energy program. They're available to help you learn how simple it can be to save some money, stop wasting money, and who doesn't want some extra money in their pocket these days? We also have some efficiency information over here. We have a great bike display if anybody wants to see what kind of people power it takes to power up regular light bulbs and how much less effort it takes to power up those CFLs. They use only a quarter of the energy, they burn cooler, and by the time you're pedaling on those LEDs, they take a fraction of that energy. It's like pedaling air. But during this program, the big focus is going to be on electrical safety. And that's what our Safe Electricity Outreach Program is all about. And everything we're going to talk about can be found on safeelectricity.org. In fact, the video featuring this man can be found on safeelectricity.org. The person that normally is out here at the Illinois Fair at this time is Kyle Finley, and he does this live power line demonstration. Kyle had a death in the family, and he had to return home. So we reached out to our good friend Shawn Miller. Shawn is from Indiana, and he was the focus of our national campaign in 2009 on electrical safety. Shawn is an amazing person. I knew the first time I met him, I was sitting in the presence of someone who was quite extraordinary. Shawn, at the age of 28, young husband and father, 2 beautiful young children, beautiful wife, perfect job, had the dream job that he wanted. Life was great. And on a November morning in 2003, he set out to do what millions of us do every year. Shawn, why don't you tell us what happened?
It was November 29th of 2003. My mother and I had a ritual where we would go out and decorate her yard after Thanksgiving on that weekend and get it all ready for Christmas. Every year my mom liked to add a new area to decorate so that it always was getting bigger and bigger and brighter and better. So she wanted to do these trees that had lined the front of her property so that people could see them a little further away and get their attention a little quicker. These trees had been in the ground since we moved in the house. I grew up there 20 plus years in that house, played in those trees, knew there were power lines up there. That morning when I set out to do the task at hand, decorate these trees, I thought I had thought of everything. I thought of how I was going to do it. My method in my head was to take half the strand, hold them in my left hand, take the other half and just toss them up in the tree, and then just walk around the tree and spin them around it. Last thing I remember was holding them in my left hand, tossing them in my right. My mother found me about 4 to 5 minutes, I think, after contact was made with the 7,200 volt line that ran above those trees. What she found was me laying on the ground, smoke rolling out of the top of my head. My chest had fire coming out of it and smoke rolling out of my back. I was unconscious. I didn't have any pulse, no heartbeat. I ended up coming to before the ambulance had got there, and thought my mother was hurt because she was sobbing and tried to get up. They held me down, told me I had hurt myself pretty severely, and then rushed me by ambulance to the local community hospital. At that point, I was in and out through that ambulance ride and through getting put in the hospital. But when I came to at that little hospital, 25 of my family members were back in the room. We found out later that they only do that when they don't expect the person's going to survive, to let them say goodbye to their family and give them a chance to be with them one last time. Then they had airlifted me to the local burn unit in Indianapolis, Wishards Burn Unit. where they put me in an induced coma for 6 days so that they could deal with my wounds and try to save my life. They told my wife that there was hardly any chance that I'd survive. If I did, I'd be in the burn unit for 2.5 to 3 years with 5 to 6 years of recovery on top of my stay. I ended up defeating the odds, getting out 30 days to the T. On my daughter's 9th birthday, I got to go home. In that 30 days I spent in Wishart Hospital, I had 32 surgeries. Just an ordeal of surgeries and procedures being done. The big thing that most people don't understand is the difference between walking up to a campfire and getting burnt and getting an electrical burn. Campfire burns you from the outside in. Electricity burns you from the inside out. My body actually burnt for 48 hours after contact with that power line. That's why some of my wounds may have been 1.5 inches, 2 inches long by 4 inches wide or opposite, but inside they could have been 3 times that size because I burnt from the inside out. One of my major wounds was out of my chest in front of my heart, and that was their main concern that they wanted to focus on first and foremost because of my organs and my heart and everything. And they took care of it first, and then they addressed my other spots, my arm, my hand. But what we found out later, hence the 24 hours of burning on electrical, was that 6 months later, after I got out of the hospital, I went in to have a revision done on my arm, and I had been having severe chest pains. And they had thought that there was some staples maybe that had got left in from all the operations. So they opened it up to see if it was a foreign object my body was rejecting. Well, when I came out of surgery thinking I was just going in for an overnight surgery, I wake up to my wife crying, and I ask what's wrong. She tells me I'm going to be in for 2 more weeks. My sternum had died. And when a bone dies in a living body, it liquefies. And the pains I was having was my body rejecting the dead bone. So they had to go in and remove my sternum, my breastbone, and end up doing a muscle flap where they take one of my abdomen muscles and put it up so there's not a 4-inch deep hole in the middle of my chest.
Shawn is a really amazing person in that he's gone on to do things that most people don't do after an accident like this. In fact, the fact that he survived is a miracle in and of itself. The vast majority of time when people are involved in an accident involving overhead power lines, they don't make it. It's just a lot of force. The temperature of an overhead power line in contact with the human body can reach 35,000 degrees. That's tremendous heat. He is lucky to be alive, and he's also an amazing person who has defied the odds to return to some kind of a normal life. He coaches his children's athletic teams. He wake surfs and wakeboards. He lives with daily pain, but yet he has gone on because he thinks it's important to show his children that you do with what life has given you and you move on. But he had to do a lot of adjusting along the way. Tell them what it was like losing your left hand.
I was left-handed. I had to teach myself how to write, how to eat, how to function as a right-handed person. It was a little bit of a challenge. It's a lot easier to do when you don't have any choice versus somebody that just wants to switch hands. But you know, I took upon myself to decide that anything was better than dead. I get to see my kids grow up. My 2 kids at the time were 8 and 6 years old. I'm fortunate enough to get to see them now. My daughter is driving. She's 16. My son's 14. And after my accident, my wife convinces me that I agreed to a 3rd child. So now I have another daughter that is 6 years old. And we live life to the fullest. I enjoy it. I taught my 6-year-old how to wakeboard this summer, and she actually competed 3 weeks ago. So this was an opportunity for me to teach my children and children I come in contact and people that, you know what, bad things happen. My accident stunk. There's nothing about it that I was happy about that day, but life's not going to stop because I was hurt. Life moves on, and I have to move on with it, and having a positive attitude and reflecting that out on my children has made them amazing individuals.
And one of the things when Shawn thinks about the fact that he was able to survive and the purpose in that is sharing his story in hopes of others avoiding the same kind of accident. And it takes a lot of courage and a tremendous character to be willing to go through that and share it with other people so that they can learn from that. What would you say is the biggest thing you want people to take away from that?
Be aware of your surroundings. That morning, the last thing on my mind was power lines. Should have been the first thing. I grew up there. They had became landscape. I didn't even think about them that morning. That's a problem. Molly said it best earlier. We notice things on our daily drive to work or on our ritual walk around the block. We notice things that are new or things that are out of place and unusual. We forget to notice that our neighbor's car is always in the parking spot where it always is because it's always there. Power lines are always there.
The things that we see every day do fade from view. There have been studies about this. It's how our brains are wired. They're up and down our streets, they're connected to our homes, but because they're familiar, we don't think about them. And that's how electricity is. A lot of us don't think about it until we flip that light switch and it's not on. But there's some other stuff that we want you to know because it's very important. Household current, 120 volts. This is the #1 reason why people die in electrical contacts. I mean, overhead power lines are dangerous, but the stuff inside your home is deadly. People think, oh, 120 volts, that will only shock me. But it can take a life. As part of our Teach, Learn, Care campaign, that bottom slide that you see there on that banner, that's 12-year-old Caitlin McKenzie. She's an Edwardsville girl who had spent the day swimming at a neighbor's pool, got out, she was damp, it was getting dark, and she went to turn the light, there was a lamp outside, onto the trampoline because that's where they were going to move to continue playing. For some reason, that lamp faulted. We don't know why. It was an older lamp. She was killed, and that story is told by her parents. This could have saved her life. This is a ground fault circuit interrupter outlet. It cuts off power in less than a second if there's a problem, and they need to be in all wet areas of our home. The kitchen, the bathroom, the laundry room, sometimes in the basement, definitely on the outdoor outlets, and if your outdoor outlets don't have one, you need to be using one of these, especially if you're operating a power tool. You need to have ground fault protection. It's actually a requirement on a job site by OSHA. So ground fault protection is important, and it's important for you to understand how it works, how to test them, how to reset the buttons, and make sure that you're protected. This is another thing that can protect you. This is a tamper-resistant receptacle or outlet. A lot of times people will use the safety caps to keep their kids safe, the little ones, from sticking in a paper clip or a safety pin or a car key. We've got a key example here. This will not let a single object go in a single slot. The plastic cover on the inside is designed to only allow 2 prongs to go in at the same time or 3 prongs to go in at the same time, not just one. But kids are going to the emergency room 2,500 times a year because of contact through an electrical outlet, and a lot of them don't make it. That's a simple way to prevent burns and shock injuries in the home in those areas. As I mentioned, we've got Shawn as the second Teach, Learn, Care campaign. The third one up there teaches some very important information. Lee and Ashley are Indiana teenagers who were driving down a country road with 2 of their friends. They're probably going a little too fast. They're on pavement, and as they top the hill, the road turns to gravel, they lose control, and they start to fishtail, and they hit a power pole, broke it, and the lines came down on their car. These kinds of accidents happen a lot more often than you think, and people die from them every year. Because a lot of times the idea is, oh my gosh, I've just been in a wreck, I've got to get out of here. And that's the wrong thing to do. Lee and Ashley had the good fortune of having seen a live power line demonstration done by Kyle Finley at their high school 5 days earlier. So instead of getting out of the car, which could have killed them, because that would have provided a path to ground, they actually stayed in the car and called for help, which is exactly what you should do. In 98% of the cases, if you're in a car accident with a down power line, or there's been a storm and a tree limb or debris has brought down a down power line on or around your car, you need to stay in that car until the utility company has arrived on the scene to ensure those lines are energized. In that car, you're like a bird on the wire. You're at one point of contact, one voltage, and you're not a path to ground. But when you step out of that car, you could be stepping from one voltage zone, say the 7,200 volts from the overhead power line, into a different voltage zone, maybe 6,000, because power dissipates as it goes out on the ground. And that current flow between your body and those voltage zones is what kills you. So you need to stay in the car, call for help, and you don't get out until the utility company arrives. Now, if the car were to start on fire, which happens very, very rarely, maybe 1 or 2% of the time, then you have to know how to get out safely. You would have to jump free and clear. You don't want to touch the vehicle and the ground at the same time. Land with your feet together and hop away. You keeping those feet together keeps you at one point of contact and in one voltage zone. You don't want to step from one voltage zone into another. But that doesn't happen very often, so you want to stay in that car if at all possible. The top story up there, the Jim Flock story, which is this year's campaign. Warrensburg, Illinois farmer, operating his crop sprayer. The extensions folded up and became entangled in the overhead power line. He was fine on his equipment, but as he stepped from his equipment down, he received fatal injuries. Jim Flock never was able to talk or move again. He languished in that condition until he eventually died of his injuries. That story is told by his surviving widow and 3 sons. The same principles apply with large equipment as it does with the cars. And it's very important to know that if you're ever operating large equipment, maybe you rent a bucket lift from the rental store, you've got to stay 10 feet away from that overhead power line. And if you do make contact, you have to know that it's survivable if you do the right things. I encourage all of you to go out on safeelectricity.org and see those videos. In the case of Shawn's video, you also get to see his mother and his wife and hear from them about the impact that accident had on their lives. You can also see a 30-minute live power line demonstration from Kyle Findley, who is the one that would normally be here during the Illinois State Fair. All of that is streamed and available for viewing on the safeelectricity.org website. Kyle covers other things in his program, like what happens if a mylar metal balloon comes in contact with electrical equipment, because it conducts electricity. You don't want to ever put a mylar balloon with helium in it attached to a mylar ribbon and hand it to a child, because you're creating a potential path to ground if that balloon touches a bare wire in the garage or the electrical connection coming into your home. So it's very important to understand electricity, to respect it, and know how to stay safe around it. That is actually the essence of our Teach, Learn, Care campaign. Teach what you know, learn what you need to, care enough to share it with those you love. So I hope you take the information that you've learned today and that you go home and make sure your family knows about electrical safety, that you use the resources on safeelectricity.org, and that you make sure that the kinds of things that could happen don't happen. And I hope you remember what Shawn has shared with you. It's a busy life. Everybody's rushing. There's a lot to do. Taking a few moments to be safe and know your surroundings can make a huge difference, because as Shawn knows, things can change in an instant.
Yeah, very much so.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'd like to give Shawn a great hand here. He's been wonderful to come and help us here at the Illinois State Fair. It's not easy to talk about a life-changing event like this, but he does it because he wants to keep other people safe. I encourage you to go over there and visit with Kyla, Ann, and Carly. We've got some nice bags for you to enjoy here at the State Fair and some other materials and giveaways. Do visit the efficiency wall and go over to the lighting display and learn about how easy it is for you to keep some money in your pocket from using energy in your homes. And we encourage you to have a great, safe day at the Illinois State Fair.